Trade. Why do people trade at all? To answer this question, I will talk about absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Imagine there are two people, person A and person B. They produce one product and another product at a different ratio. One person is faster at producing product X, the other person is faster at producing product Y. Suppose this is the productivity to make things in one day. Now, if they would split their time in half and both produce both product X and product Y in one day, the numbers would drop in half. Person A would produce 3 and 2, and person B would produce 2 and 3. But there seems a smarter way of going about things. That is, for both to produce what they are best at and produce none of the other, and then to engage in trade and split their production in half and trade at a ratio of one product for one product, and then they both end up with 3 products of both items. If we compare this with the situation where they don't trade, we see that both persons A and B are better off compared to if they wouldn't trade. Now let's make the example a little bit more difficult, a little bit more complex. Suppose person A is better at producing both products X and Y. Now, if they would split their day in half and produce both products themselves, this is what that would look like. Now let's see what would happen if they both traded, if they both produced what they are best at, and if then they would engage in trade. So person A produces 6 of X, and person B produces 2 of Y. Then they engage in trade. For every 1 X, person A gets from person B 1 Y, and vice versa. So now person B with 1 trade has 1 Y and 1 X, which is better than he would have had if he had produced all by himself. But person A still has a lot of X products, so he can do the same trade with another person. Same situation, person C gets 1 X and he traded in 1 Y, and now person A has 4 X left and 2 Y, and then he makes another trade with a third person, person D, and now person D too has 1 and 1, and now person A has 3 and 3, because he traded in another X for a Y. And now if we compare this situation with no trading, we see that both person A and person B and C and D are all better off. Person A has 3Y, whereas he would otherwise have 2Y, and person B and C and D all have 1 of both instead of half and 1. Now let's change the situation again, where person B makes 2X in a day and 1 Y in a day. That looks like this. Because now it's a little less obvious what we should do. If they split their energy in half again for the different products, this is what we get. 6 becomes 3, 4 becomes 2, 2 becomes 1, 1 becomes a half. Now they should both produce what they are best at comparatively. That is to say, person A is 4 times better at producing Y and only 3 times better at producing X. This means person A should produce Y and person B should produce 2, where his disadvantage is the smallest. Then we engage in a trade. For example, for every X that person A gets, he gives up 2/3 of Y. So he gets 1 after one trade, and he loses 2/3 of his 4, which leaves him with 3 1/3, and person B has 1 X remaining and has gained 2/3 of Y. And again, we engage with the same trade with a third person. Now person A has 2X and he only has 2 2/3 of Y left. Person C is the same as person B. And a third trade with the fourth person. Now person A has 3X and 2Y remaining. If we compare this with the situation of no trade, it's the same, but all persons B, C and D all are better off. But you can see that they are better off by a certain margin. 2/3 is larger than half. Now if B, C and D would have traded, would have gained only half a Y for every 1 X that they gave up, then they would be in the same situation as they would be if they hadn't traded, so that wouldn't be beneficial to them. So if they trade at a price between half and 2/3, then all 4 people are better off, because then person A has gained more than 3X and person B, C and D has gained more than 0.5 of Y. So the price has to go either a little bit above half for every 1X or a little bit below 2/3 Y for every 1X. Increasing productivity. As you saw in the examples, being more productive means having more wealth. First of all, you have more wealth because you have generated more wealth of your own, but you're also left with more wealth to trade with other people. So we saw that person A was constantly in a good situation. Being more productive is one way to gain more wealth. Another way is to produce higher quality products or products that are more rare. Because for those products, people may be willing to give up more things for it. In a sense, you can get a better price on them. The way this happens is, the way getting a higher productivity happens is as you focus on one specialty, you get more experience and knowledge about the subject. You avoid overhead time. In the example, we used half and half to divide up the time and calculated half the productivity with it. In practice, this is not attainable. For example, if your products are fish from the sea and apples from the woods, and you have to walk an hour to the sea and back and an hour to the forest and back, then you cannot attain your maximum hourly productivity. Because if your day was only 4 hours long, all you could have done is walking. Whereas if you had done only one of the tasks, you would have had some fish or some apples. Savings and investment. If you save, which means that you don't consume all that you produce, then you can use those resources to buy new tools, or consume those resources as you build your own production technology. All of this overcomes the cost that trading brings with it as well. Now let's think about the real world. People specialize and the productivity shoots up as people dedicate their whole career on a specialty or on a focused number of skills. So for example, the productivity people have isn't that closely as we had in the previous examples, but even then it was still beneficial to trade. But as people specialize more and more, this advantage becomes much more pronounced. So for example, one person specializes completely in cooking, another person specializes in management, or somebody specializes in tennis, or somebody specializes in singing. You can see that someone who is a cook and owns his own restaurant could also make his living in management, but the combination of those skills plus cooking gives him the highest productivity. Another person may be good at management, also has some skills for cooking, and he may even give somebody some tennis lessons because he is a little bit of an athlete, but in management his skills are the most pronounced. Or take Roger Federer, for example. He wins a lot of money playing tennis. His daily productivity is very high. He has specialized his whole life in that. He may also be a cook with which he could earn a living, but instead he chooses to make all his money playing tennis and then use those gains he has to acquire other people's services in other areas. Same thing may be true for a singer who can earn a lot of money in a night. This is a ballpark figure, I really don't know. He may also be a decent cook, but he specializes in singing. Maybe Roger Federer earns more because he can play more tournaments. It's not quite clear, but you see how people specialize and divide up their time. Also, you don't need to work every single day, particularly when your productivity is very high. You can use that income to have more leisure time on other days. So people produce almost entirely for the consumption of others. The exercise is to look at the market and predict what people will value, and to produce it. 2 and 3. But there seems a smarter way of going about things. That is, for both to produce what they are best at and produce none of the other. And then there are two people, person A and person B. They produce one product and another product at a different ratio. One person is faster at producing product X. The other person is faster at producing product Y. Suppose this is the productivity to make things in one day. Now, if they would split their time in half and both produce both product X and product Y in one day, the numbers would drop in half. Person A would produce 3 and 2, and person B would produce. Trade. Why do people trade at all? To answer this question, I will talk about absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Imagine